Good morning, guys. So we are going to go ahead and get started with our next unit today. So we're going to be starting to move away from British literature. We're going to be, American literature and moving into British literature. So we don't really have time to read all of British literature or a piece from every movement like we did from American literature, but I really wanted you to have a good base of your own literature before we started moving on to other places and peoples, abroad. So the first, out of country people we're going to be talking about are the British. And of course, the British aren't just English. When we talk about British, we're talking about that whole little group in Europe. So we're going to be talking about Wales and Scotland and Ireland and England, of course. We're going to be talking about all those little places that are right there by England because they are all classified as British. In that particular category of British literature, the two primary things we're going to be looking at are sonnets and drama. So today we're going to be focusing on the sonnet. And we're going to kind of stick with modern literature throughout our modern English, which starts about the time Shakespeare is writing, and for us in America, that's about the colonial era, the Puritans. So we're going to kind of stick with our beginning point, and we're going to hop the pond, as they would say, over to England. And again, we're going to be looking at sonnets today. So I just want you guys to have a little bit of background about sonnets before I ask you to read any of them. And that is not possible to see. Sorry, guys. I got it back up. Better. Not really. We're going to figure this out. Ooh, there we go. That'll work. All right. So, sonnets are a type of poem, okay? So this particular type of poem is very, very structured, okay? So you cannot get away from the structure and still have what's classified as a sonnet. So with that being said, I know the closer we got to modern and contemporary literature and American literature, we started talking a little bit more about how there was less structure, how it's just less you can point at it and say that's what it is. You just have to kind of be a little bit more broad and flexible the later you get in literature, and that's like that for the world. But when we go back as early as Puritan or colonial literature, and even going back as far as Shakespeare for English or British writing or literature, we have very, very structured things like the sonnet. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to stay awake this morning. So I'll go ahead and make that note. Very structured. So, of course, if we know something's very structured and traditional, we probably need to know what that structure looks like or what's important about them. So some key things to know when it comes to a sonnet is they are all 14 lines long. Every single one of them, all of them, period, end of story, no exceptions. Very structured, very strict, very traditional, okay? So in that 14 lines, you have a couple of moving parts depending on which type of sonnet you look at. So we're only going to look at 3 primary types, but there are tons more. We're going to be looking at the English or Shakespearean, which is what we're going to primarily focus on. We're going to be looking at, or we're going to talk about the Petrarchan sonnet made by a guy named Petrarch. And then we're going to be looking at the Spenserian sonnet, which is the first sonnet structure being used in England, but Shakespearean sonnets are a little bit more popular. So we're going to be looking more at those than we are at the other types. In that 14 lines, when you're looking at Shakespearean sonnets or English sonnets, that means you're going to have a couple of important things. First of all, you're going to have what are called quatrains. You're going to have 3 of those. And quatrains are sets of 4 lines. So you're going to have 3 sets of 4 lines. Okay? And then, of course, if you do the math there, that's 12. And we know sonnets are 14 lines. So we know there's 2 left, and those 2 are called a couplet, or a rhyming couplet. They are 2 lines long, together making those 14. This is not like this for every sonnet. Every sonnet will have 14 lines, but depending on which type of sonnet, so for example, Shakespearean, you're going to have 3 quatrains and a rhyming couplet. When you look at Petrarchan sonnets, let me see if I can spell Petrarchan. That looks right. So Petrarchan sonnets are really different, okay? So they are actually combined of what is called 1 octave, so 8 lines, an 8-line section, and 1 sestet, which is 6 lines. Which, if you do that math, it also adds up to 14. On the other hand, when you are looking at the Shakespearean, you're going to kind of fall in, or the Shakespearean and the Spenserian are ordered this way. Don't quote me on that spelling. I am not sure. But Shakespearean and Spenserian are both going to have the quatrain and couplet organization, whereas Petrarchan sonnets are going to have the octave and sestet organization. Fun fact about the Petrarchan, they also have what's known as a volta. And this happens between lines 8 and 9. So a volta is a turning point or a changing point. So this turning point or changing point is kind of the same thing as the rhyming couplet here in Shakespearean and Spenserian sonnets. So a volta or turning point kind of just shifts. It's a shift in the poem from one idea or content or feeling to saying something else about it. So for example, most Shakespearean sonnets are set up in one of 2 ways. They are either 3 reasons or 3 ideas about something, and then they have 2 lines that are either a reflection on that idea or a conclusion based on that idea. So this is the problem, this is my solution in the rhyming couplet, or these are the ideas I'm talking about, and this is kind of me turning it on its head or commenting on it in some way. So that rhyming couplet or this volta moment do something different for the text that other types of poetry don't, and sonnets, of course, are very structured, so they will have either this volta or rhyming couplet moment. So again, we're going to be looking mostly at the Shakespearean style. Just because A, it's the most popular, B, Shakespeare wrote so many sonnets, hundreds of sonnets. Fun fact about Shakespearean sonnets, they are actually named in 3 different ways. So most things that we know about, like most works, we know that it has one name. Shakespearean sonnets are different. So Shakespeare didn't title them. He didn't really say, the title of my poem is, whatever. So they use actually 3 methods of naming his sonnets so people know which one is which one you're talking about. There are actually 2 numbering methods, so the same sonnet can be 60 and 130, just depending on which numbering system you're using. So there are 2 numbering systems. And the third is using the title of the text, or the first line of the sonnet as the title of the text. So those are the 3 ways to title a Shakespearean sonnet. We are going to be using either first name, our first line as the name, our title, or a few of them are kind of known by one particular numbering system. Whew, I haven't had enough coffee this morning, guys. Excuse my craziness. So this is just some of the basics here. Some other fun facts you might want to keep in mind when we talk about sonnets is that they focus on one emotion, thought, or experience. And this one emotion, thought, or experience is really, really intense. It's focused, okay? And it does this so it can really, really hone in on that idea and really describe and like really get into the nitty-gritty of those details for that particular emotion, thought, or experience. So this was a big, big fan favorite in the time they were written, especially here in Shakespeare's England. And of course, he was known. He was one of the few writers that we think of as famous who were actually famous during their lifetime and wealthy during their lifetime. So he was notorious for writing both plays and sonnets. We will read a couple of both from him. Not full plays, but we will read full sonnets because they're short, sweet, and we can do that. So again, they are a particular type of poem. They are very, very structured and strict on that structure and very, very traditional. This is known as a very traditional method of writing. So when you're starting to think about how the author put the text together, it's very traditional. It's very structured. It has these parts that we have listed here depending on which type you're discussing. And it has that thought or connection with one emotion, thought, experience, etc. Again, it's really, really, really on that focus. And one of the major, major topics it's going to talk about is love. That is going to be one of the biggest topics you're going to see in Shakespearean, Spenserian, doesn't matter. Love is one of the most intense emotions you can experience. So, of course, the poem type that focuses on one particularly intense and focused experience, love is totally going to be high up on that list. And we will definitely read a Shakespeare sonnet oriented around the concept of love. Couple other random tidbits that you need to kind of be aware of. So typically, Shakespearean and Spenserian sonnets are written in what is called iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter is, they're types of syllable sounds, okay? So iambic pentameter is known as a unstressed, stressed syllable. So unstressed syllable. It depends where you put the stress on the different syllables in different words, okay? So when you read a Shakespearean sonnet or a Spenserian sonnet, which again, Spenser was the one who kind of invented it first, using that iambic pentameter to make in his particular type of structure. So it uses all these bits and pieces, but he was kind of the first to do it. So I'll just put that here first. Those are also in your extra notes that I provided, because I figured you probably need a little bit of extra something with this organized besides my little chart here. So Spenserian and Shakespearean are going to have 14 lines broken into 3 quatrains, which are 4 sets of 4 lines. They're going to have a rhyming couplet, which is a set of 2 lines to equal those 14. And they're going to be written in iambic pentameter. They will also rhyme. This is part of the really, really strict traditional part of their poetry style. Okay. So Shakespearean and Spenserian and Petrarchan are all going to have end rhymes. So let me put that up here. Use end rhyme. End rhyme is when the last word of a sentence rhymes to something, another last line in a sentence. End rhyme. It rhymes at the end. If that's how, it's easier for you to remember. For Shakespearean, Spenserian, and Petrarchan, they all have different ways of doing this end rhyme system, and they're called rhyme schemes. So they all have rhyme schemes, but they are all different. So Shakespeare, his goes a little something like this. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This is the way the words will end. So the last line of the first and third line will rhyme. The last lines of the second and fourth line will rhyme. The fifth and seventh line will rhyme. The sixth and eighth line will rhyme. So whatever letter matches, those words should rhyme. If you write this at the end of each of your lines, if you write these letters, the matching letter will rhyme. On the other hand, for Spenserian, he did things a little different, all right? So he did his a little bit more connected, okay? So his was A, B, B, C, C, D, E. Okay? So he kind of connected each stanza's rhyming to the one before it. So the B rhyme is going to transfer over to stanza 2 or quatrain 2. Rhyme C is going to come in quatrain 3. And then E has its own, just like the Spenserian or English style sonnet. Finally, we have the Petrarchan, which Petrarch just did his own thing, all right? So he was actually writing in the 14th century, much, much sooner than we see Spenser I think I'm getting my numbers mixed up, but he's definitely writing before both of these fellas, but I want to say he's writing in the 14th century. It's either him or Spenser who's writing in the 14th century. Don't quote me on numbers. Never a good idea. So like again, he just does his own thing. He goes A, B, B, A, C, D, C, D, C, D. Because remember, his isn't organized in quatrains, so his isn't going to look at as much like this. It's going to be set up in sets of 8, so it's going to be A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A. So the first set and the second set of 4. So that whole octave is going to look the same. And then we're going to have our two sets of 3, which is going to be our sestet put together. It's going to be C, D, C, D, C, D. So those rhymes are going to carry over to kind of connect those pieces because they're all part of one system. But of course, you see that the rhymes are going to be different in the octave and the sestet. And these are all just fancy terms, guys. A lot of these things, you can break it down into the simpler ideas. But if you have access to these terminologies, like I have here for you, use them. They're there for you, and a lot of times those kinds of like little nitpicky things can be the difference between you understanding like a really complicated question in my class and not. Just knowing what I'm asking. And I mean, that's half the battle when you're, doing anything for school and, state testing and all that kind of stuff. Speaking of which, I just wanted to make a couple of general announcements. So as we are moving out of quarter 1 into quarter 2, keep in mind that you do have a state test for this course, and it is worth 25% of your final grade. You will be taking that test, I want to say, the second week of December, second or third week of December. I'm going to get those dates for you. I want to say the 14th is sticking out in my brain, but don't quote me on that. But I will get you those dates pretty soon here. So all these skills I've been teaching you guys are very relevant. They're showing you literally how to break down these ideas, what to look for, what you're going to be asked about. I do take my testing job really seriously, so I do want you to do well, and I don't want you to do well just because numbers necessarily matter. I want you to do well because you do well. I want you to learn things. I want you to be successful. And part of being successful in this day and age is doing well on your state testing. And you can take those skills and carry them over, because if you can do those skills, that benefits you. And I know this sounds like, well, Ms. Jenkins, how are sonnets going to benefit me? Reading complex material and being able to break it down and understand it is very important. That's a life skill. That's not just an English skill. You should be reading and writing in all of your classes. That's just how life goes. You will be reading and writing for the rest of your life, whether you want to or not. So might as well get a good handle on it now, and get those skills down, so that analyzing, that summarizing, breaking down how the author is doing something and why they're doing something, which we are going to get more into with this particular unit. We're going to be talking more about fictional texts, and we're definitely going to be hitting home our style elements, so our how is the author putting the text together, what devices are they using, what is the impact those things are having on the text. So those are going to be kind of our focuses for this unit. So we kind of went into some bits and pieces on annotating in our first unit, and our second unit we really talked about American literature and that historical context, and all those things are going to travel over, but we're going to have some different focuses here in the third unit, which again is going to be primarily British literature, and then we're going to kind of trickle into our Greek literature towards the end with drama. Let me know if there are any additional questions. I'd be happy to help. As always, please check this video out before Monday. That way we can go ahead and get started on all the other stuff we need to read this next quarter, because it's going to fly, guys. And we don't have a lot of time, and we do have a lot to do. So, again, let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I'm here, and check out those notes that have this stuff a little bit more organized for you. It should be linked here with the video. Y'all have a great day. Be safe. Be good out there in this probably questionable weather. All right, guys. See ya.